This video is likely going to garner some dislikes and hate. If you find yourself getting angry with the information I present, do yourself a favor and turn the video off and go take a walk. Cool down. For those who will take offense as if I'm attacking you personally, as if I somehow am purposefully selecting you as a target, please try to understand this is not about you. You may thoroughly enjoy the Chord Mojo, but those who haven't purchased one yet, or have and are confused why it doesn't sound how they thought it would, should pay some attention to this video. This video isn't about any one person. It's not about those who love or hate the audiophile world. It's not about your preferences in music, your taste in products, or your life choices. Instead, it has everything to do about revealing a concerted effort to blind us all. Humpty Dumpty is a children's rhyme. To children, it means, well, nothing. But there are indeed a number of possible interpretations that historians and fabulists had given it. One is quite apropos for our purposes. A siege of an English castle in 1648. You see, the original Humpty Dumpty was likely a very large cannon propped atop a high wall. This cannon was so massive, heavy, and awe-striking that the people in the castle thought it would defend them against any attack. There it sat on top of that castle wall, waiting to be used. The citizens of the castle rested peacefully, believing this cannon could not be defeated. The problem, according to some experts, is that Humpty Dumpty sat atop a wall which itself was subject to attack. Attack the wall, weaken it, and the heavy cannon would come tumbling down. And that's exactly what happened. That is what the Chord Mojo represents, and everyone who defends it to absurdity needs to wake up and realize their castle is crumbling around them. When you buy something, you expect it to work, and when that item costs a lot of money, you expect few hassles. That's what makes Apple products so enticing to people. You buy an Apple computer or phone, turn it on, and after a few moments are ready to use it. You pay a premium for this experience, but it is one that is truly unique. The problem with the Mojo is that it has the premium price, but not the premium finish. It's like charging $20 for a martini and then finding out that the bartender used Popov. You'd be a little pissed. The frustration for me has been the constant issues. The Mojo won't turn on. The Mojo's battery needs replacement. The Mojo won't connect to my computer. The Mojo won't connect to my phone. The Mojo won't connect to my DABs. The Mojo has no features. Over the course of the last several months, I found the Mojo to be a rather frustrating device for three very specific reasons. First, I need special cables to connect it to things. Second, the battery was faulty. And third, the sound was not as others, and Chord at one point, advertised. Let's cover each. In the United States, we joke that something is special. And when we emphasize that word, we mean that something is stupid or dumb or outrageous. For example, his mom thinks he's special. Chord clearly thinks the Mojo is, special. I agree. It is especially stupidly designed. On paper, having two headphone outputs, an optical, a 3.5mm coaxial, and two micro USB ports sounds fantastic. I mean, look at all those connection options. Chord fanboys drool and claim victory, until, that is, you take a closer look. Two headphone ports is stupid. You see, having two headphone ports is pointless. Who cares? Who else is listening or wants to listen to your music with you? If this is a desktop replacement amp deck, then the other person is sitting awfully close to you at your computer. If it's a mobile solution, as Chord says it is meant to be, then the other person already has their own phone or device to listen from. In either case, despite having two headphone outs, only one person can control the volume and music. What happens if one of you finds double ocean blue tinged with ivory to be the right volume color, while the other would prefer one green and one dim yellow? Regardless, both people will have to agree to a volume level, and if one doesn't agree, why the hell would he listen with you? The idea that the other people will want to sit and listen to your music on your special device is, frankly, moronic. Either it is the display of hubris, believing you hold the keys to ethereally perfect music, or it is the result of some muddled, unfocused, and uninspired design choices. Frankly, as we'll come to see with the rest of this analysis, I will argue it is the latter, that the designers and engineers of the device were unfocused, muddled, and frankly, uninspired. The optical port does nothing. Why have an optical port for a portable device? I mean, Chord sells the Mojo as a portable, and how many portable devices have an optical jack? Your phone, DAP, and tablet certainly don't. Yes, I understand. Optical, if implemented correctly, is far less likely to transmit noise from source to output. Consequently, depending on the environment and many other factors, an optical connection would theoretically contain measurably less noise than a coaxial connection. Notice I said measurably and not noticeably. We'll come back to that sort of theme later. However, an optical connection still doesn't transmit high bandwidth format like lossless audio. Optical is also limited to 2 channels of uncompressed PCM. Now, whether that makes an actual difference is up for debate. Moreover, optical is itself prone to faults. The optical port or the cable terminator can be damaged, and with longer optical cable runs, some of the digital information can be lost during transmission, resulting in jitter and gaps in the music, which, by the way, a lot of people have complained about. But the short of it is, for mobile use, optical is impractical. For desktop use, you already have the USB connection, which all computers have. The vast majority of laptops do not have optical ports, and fewer desktop computers have optical ports. That 3.5mm coaxial is digital and annoying. When you look at the 3.5mm coaxial, you might think, gee, that's great, I'll just patch my phone into this port and joyously listen to my Mojo. Wrong. You see, this is a digital 3.5mm coaxial. It won't work with any standard 3.5mm cable you have lying around. No sir, you can't just plug your phone or DAP into the 3.5mm port and listen. Instead, you need a special cable or a series of special cables if you have more than one mobile device, just to get things to work with the Mojo. Now look, I have a lot of DAPs. I have an AK SR15, I own 4 Cohens, a P1, a P2, an M2, and a D2. I have a Sony WM1A, a Hibby R6, a Pioneer XDP300R, a Calyx M, a KN I5, a FIO M11. None of these connect to the Mojo using a standard 3.5mm cable. Yeah, you can connect any other portable amp DAC using a 3.5mm cable to any one of my players. That's how I've been able to connect my FIO Q5, Little Bear B4, Little Bear B4X, Woo Audio WA8, Monolith THX Portable, the i5 portables, and many others. But the Mojo, oh no, that requires special attention. You know, I email Chord for a solution. I email them predicting what they would say. Basically, sorry mate, we can't help you. And you know what? That's exactly what they said. Here's my email to them. I asked Chord, quote, I have a TRRS to TRS cable that works with my Hibby R6, but with nothing else, not with my FIO M11, KN-I5, Plenu 1, Astro and Current SR15, or my Calyx M. Can you please tell me what cables are required to connect those DAPs to the Mojo? And Chord's response was, well, classic Chord. They said, quote, I'm not familiar with all of these players, but I believe that most will respond via an OTG adapter from their USB output connected to a USB cable that goes to the USB input of the Mojo. It certainly works with the SR15. Wrong. Well, partly wrong. Mostly wrong. You see, the SR15 does connect using a micro USB to micro USB cable, but nothing else does. And for Chord's representative to not know the answer is a testament to Chord's lack of attention. Surely, when designing a mobile amp DAC, they knew that it would be used with mobile devices. And surely they should know of every one of these DAPs from the audiophile community. The FIO M11 is recently released and the talk of the town. The KN I5 is years old and well received, same with the Cohen P1. I can excuse not knowing much about the Calyx M, but not by a whole lot. It is apparent from Chord's response that no attempt was made to figure out an answer. "Have you tried a USB cable?" is essentially their answer. It's like when you call technical support when your computer crashes, and the tech says, "Have you tried restarting the computer?" Yeah, I restarted the computer, you moron, since I was trying to avoid sitting on hold for 30 minutes while I awaited your godly wisdom to rain down upon me. So, yes, Chord, I did try the USB cables, and thank you for not answering the question. Thank you for not bothering to look up these DAPs before responding. Thank you for not making an effort to determine whether USB would actually work with any of these devices. It turns out that the 3.5mm coaxial on the Mojo is very unique indeed. It is a TRS port and digital. So not only will you have to find a TRS cable termination on one end, but also the appropriate termination on the other end for your DAP. And since none of my DAPs have TRS coaxial ports, that meant hunting down a TRS to TRRS cable. Oh, and then there's more. You have to make sure that the player has a digital coaxial port as well. Otherwise, the Mojo won't care and won't recognize the signal. It turns out that the Hippie R6 is the only player of mine that works with the cable I purchased, and despite trying for several days to find a similar 3.5mm cable for my other DAPs, I couldn't. Which then led me onto a lengthy research project. I was going to, by hook or by crook, find out what did work with the Mojo. And I came across several HeadFi posts that tried to offer workarounds to this problem. Some claiming that if you use a coaxial cable with an adapter, that will work with some DAPs. I tried that. It didn't work with any of my players. Then I came across another HeadFi post that collated a list of common DAPs that did and did not work with the Mojo, including the type of connection needed. I reviewed it, and a lot of my players were listed. It turned out that half of the connection options suggested for my players were wrong. Ultimately, I have been able to narrow the required cables for my various DAPs, after weeks of research, trial and error, and frankly, extra cost. But I have found solutions. No thanks to Chord. Oh, and by the way, I'll post another video regarding my solutions at a later date. 2 micro USB ports sound great until they don't. There is a benefit to having 2 USB ports on the Mojo. Because the battery will fail fairly quickly with regular charging, it's best to keep the USB charging ports separate from the USB data port. That way, you would theoretically get the maximum battery life out of the Mojo. And that is exactly why this is a terrible idea. In their haste to create the most amazing product in audiophile history, Chord forgot that users usually want to enjoy the product. Moreover, using a micro USB makes no sense when the USB-C is now king. Yeah, I know, the Mojo was released in 2016 and... Oh, wait. 2016 was when USB-C was released and out and in mass production. You can make the excuse that Chord couldn't predict that USB would take off, USB-C. And I'd say if that were true, then Chord's engineers need to be fired. USB-C was actually introduced in 2014, and there were no doubts that it would become mainstream given time. But let us assume that Chord really didn't know, in which case it could have done a bit of engineering and future-proofed their device. Now look, I agree, the micro USB thing is a small issue in the end. But is it a small thing that Chord doesn't even ship 2 USB cables in the box, one for each port? Is it a small thing that you'll have to spend more money just to get a micro USB cable so you can charge and use the device at the same time? Well, yeah, when you look at the bigger problem, the battery. The battery problem should never have happened. Let's be blunt. Chord created a faulty product. They installed a battery that is prone to failure, shorting, or prematurely dying. Now, wasn't that a stupid thing to do, Chord? What was it? Was it the cost that made you do it? Was that why you used a battery that kills some of the units, shorts, and dies? Yeah, maybe I'm being a little dramatic. Fine. All battery-operated electronics will need a battery replacement at some point. All batteries fail eventually. Batteries aren't perfect. But when Chord charges $500 for the Mojo, you'd expect a bit more help with the battery replacement. I uploaded a battery replacement video a few weeks ago and explained the trouble I had finding a compatible battery. I finally received a response from Chord when I asked if they could send me a replacement battery directly or if I could send my unit to them for a replacement. And here's what they said. Quote, Dear Sir, thanks for your email. You have two options. You can order a battery for self-replacement here. And then they provide the hifipro.ca web link, which is where I got my battery to begin with before I got this response. Or they go on, or you can send it to one of our service agents. One in the eastern region, one in the western region. All the best, Ed. Boy, that's very unhelpful. For $500, Chord should offer at least one free battery replacement. Charge us the shipping. I can live with that. But knowing that the battery is prone to failure and knowing that the battery will be charged and recharged frequently, Chord should have done right by their customers. They should have guaranteed one free battery replacement with each unit. But that's not what we get. We get to pay Chord a premium for their device, and then we get to pay another premium for the battery. This is the definition of apathy towards the customer. Excuses for these problems. You might say that since I got my Mojo secondhand, these are all problems of a used unit. Well, there's always that possibility, but I'm not the only one suffering from these frustrations. Search the internet and you'll find users complaining about exactly what I have gone through. A dead battery within 18 months, if not less. The Mojo won't wake up or start up. No sound. One or more of the ports isn't working. The sound is grainy. There's a reason why I am so thorough in my reviews. Because I want to be transparent about my review process, and because people deserve to know how a device truly functions day to day. Most reviewers of the Mojo will have had their units for a few weeks, maybe a few months at most, and they'll spend a few hours with the device over that course of time, make a review, and then move on, never to return for an update. But what happens if the Mojo starts breaking or dying or malfunctioning in some other way after the third month, after the review has been posted and the reviewer has moved on to other projects? The issues I'm pointing out are issues that others will in fact face. And when you are about to pay $500 for something, you damn well better know what you're getting yourself into. And those reviewers who either placate Chord or ignore the problem should be ashamed of their dishonesty. But the dishonesty doesn't stop with the problems we mentioned already. It flows rather seamlessly into the sound signature. The sound is not great. I bet if you're thinking of buying a Mojo, you've read or heard that it has fantastic sound. Well, one man's fantastic sound is another man's mundane sound, I say. When researching the Mojo's purported excellent sound signature, I came across a rather strange discrepancy. Being the inquisitive person I am, I did a bit of investigation. And it turns out, you've been had, and Chord and its fanboys have been a little bit deceptive. You may have been told that the Mojo has detailed and engaging and immersive sound. Indeed, plenty of so-called reviewers continually use vague terms like these to confuse you, or because they have no idea what they're talking about, or both. I'll give you an analysis of a conspiracy to rob you of your money. Sit tight and buckle in. John Darko's Dark Encounter. John Darko reviews a lot of very expensive audio gear. He runs a YouTube channel with videos of sleek transitions and good camera work. He clearly knows a lot about audio, which is why I'm confused he uses blatantly idiotic terminology to describe the Mojo. It's like taking a woman on a date and knowing little to nothing about wine, trying to impress her with your explanation about how the wine tastes. Hey, trust me, she's not that amused. John writes, and I quote, "The Mojo stitches details together in a far more intricate web than its less costly rivals. It's altogether more talented at revealing the inner complexities of music and therefore more immersive. It's also more extended up top. The Mojo's presentation is lit up such that it takes the listener down to the bone on his or her music selections. Think more MRI, less X-ray." In another post, John writes, "This DAC amplifier's sonic flavor is one of candy floss, cotton candy, fairy floss." Look, you might as well tell your date, "This wine has a flavor of silk and an aroma of cardamom on the back of a pickup truck being driven after a thunderstorm atop a slick, wet road." Very nice. I'm sure that the girl will find it very helpful. Fine. John's description is typical audiophile prattle. But what's more interesting is his summary of a conversation he had with Chord. And this is where things start getting real good. Frankly, I'm not quite sure John Darko knew what he was doing, but I'm glad he did it because he left a paper trail that I followed and now am revealing to you. This is the depth of dishonesty. You see, when Chord was about to release the Mojo, they sent notices to reviewers, and most likely reviewers Chord knew would be inclined to say nice things. John apparently was one of them and was a bit confused what the Mojo was supposed to do. I mean, why buy a cheaper product when a more expensive one exists? So John sent an email to Chord asking for some input. What does this thing do? What's the big deal with the Mojo? John says he got a response from Rob Watts himself, and Watts designed the Mojo. I'm sure other people helped. According to John, Watts' response showed irritation, and I will quote John's blog exactly. He says, an email was dispatched to Rob Watts inquiring after a technical matter. He, of course, doesn't say what technical matter. Watts' clarification came back within hours. So did a grumble. Watts apparently said, quote, "You are completely missing the point about Mojo. It is a reference class DAC with a tiny price tag. If we were to put it in a 20-kilogram box and charge $60,000 USD, reviewers would be wetting themselves over its sound quality and technical performance. You want to compare it? Put it up against a DCS Vivaldi and judge it honestly without preconceptions to price and size." Oh, by the way, if you don't know what a DCS Vivaldi is, it's a reference class DAC. It looks like this. Oh, and it cost $36,000. Anyway, not satisfied, the CEO of Chord, John Franks, shoved Watts aside from the driver's seat of this hype train. He also emailed John Darko and said, quote, "This is no cheap, simple product inside its case. Please go back to it. This is about the most important design we've ever developed." Oh, and one more thing. Chord put an embargo on the review. According to John Darko, Chord gave review units to a lead time of 3 days. Darko said this was woefully insufficient for a proper review treatment. And looking at all the reviews so far, I would agree. The oopsie on Headphonia. I've spoken of Headphonia before. It's a hi-fi review website that, in all fairness, tends to provide fairly lengthy written reviews, often 3 pages long. Now, the substance of the reviews is arguably lacking, but a little bit of effort is clearly evident. Headphonia reviewed the Mojo, and they spoke to Chord, and Chord made an oopsie. Headphonia asked about Mojo and what it was supposed to do, and Chord responded, quote, "Mojo is built upon the multi-award-winning Hugo platform and will afford the listener with Hugo-like performance for a fraction of the cost. Inside Mojo is a massively powerful headphone amplifier that will deliver crystal clear audio whether you use in-ear buds or large studio cans." You'd think that Chord would be proud to announce its portable compares to the Hugo and has crystal clear audio. So I went to Chord's website and scoured the Mojo page for any mention of crystal clear audio. Nope. Nothing on the website about the Mojo having crystal clear sound like the Hugo. Oh, don't get me wrong, the website does mention the Hugo, but in an oblique way. And here's what the website says, in part. Quote, "But when you combine this with the latest trickle-down FPGA DAC technology from the Hugo series and Dave products, Mojo is an unbeatable pocketable device that offers Hugo-like performance for a fraction of the cost." Nothing about crystal clear sound. And see, that slight change in the language, instead of slapping their hands on the table and proclaiming, "The Mojo is the Hugo but smaller," Chord instead now says that the Mojo has Hugo-like performance. What a vague term. You know, my iPhone also has Hugo-like performance. You see, just like the Hugo, I send sound to my headphones. Just like the Hugo, my phone amplifies the music. Just like the Hugo, I can play high-res files from my phone. And just like the Hugo, I can enjoy my music. You see, it's so easy to say one thing is like another without actually saying anything helpful. The analysis of Darko and Headphonia. You may ask what this has to do with anything. Well, I think it has to do with truth, honesty, consumer friendliness. It has to do with being a reputable company and one that is truly dedicated to providing the best experience for the end user, whoever that might be and at whatever social bracket they may fall into. The emails that John Darko shared demonstrated a striking defensiveness at the top of Chord's structure. They were offended that Darko even asked what the Mojo was supposed to do. They compared the Mojo to a $36,000 reference class DAC. Then they proclaimed the Mojo, if packaged and priced at $30,000, would fly off the shelves. This is the most important design we've ever developed. Remember? That's what CEO John Frank said. Most important? Yeah, I think so. Most important to Chord's financial bottom line. Now, bring in the marketing nonsense Chord provided to Headphonia. They told Headphonia that the Mojo has the performance of the Hugo, and the detail to boot. Both Darko and Headphonia were told quite clearly that the Mojo is a reference class unit, as good as the most expensive audiophile gear on the market. You know, when people say something is reference class, I expect it to be neutral, so that I can actually reference the music. Adding distortion or emphasizing any particular area of the frequency range is not neutral, not reference. It is instead a sound character, which I'm fine with as long as you're honest about it. So Headphonia put Chord's claim to the test. Is the Mojo detailed and clear and referencey? And they said, well, I'll quote them in entirety. Quote, Mojo has a very good level of detail from bass to highs, but it might be a little stronger in the mids and bass department compared to the treble. Treble is energetic yet still relaxed and detailed, but it at the same time doesn't fully extend. Hardly anyone will find the Mojo's treble lacking though, it's more than good enough. Mojo is clean, clear, dynamic, and transparent. It to me also has a little more compact sound with a touch of darkness, especially compared to the Hugo. I find the Mojo's depth and width good, but not as impressive as the one on the Hugo, which has better layering by far. Oh, Headphonia, why are you so kind when the test you conducted showed that Chord lied? I've said this over and over again about the Mojo through the multitude of tests I've conducted and comparisons I've done. The Mojo sounds good, but it is not a reference class amp DAC. It has a boosted bass, it has rolled off treble, it lacks detail retrieval. And that's exactly what Headphonia found too. Let us analyze all of this information. The analysis will require a bit of synthesizing. Get ready. It appears that Chord overextended itself. It made claims so outrageous the audiophile community should have balked, but it didn't. Chord took offense when John Darko asked for clarification and then told him to go back and be fair in his review because clearly remotely questioning the product was being unfair. Chord lied to Headphonia, and when the results showed Chord had lied, Headphonia made excuses to make it seem that there's no problem at all. Then, when we turn to a more unbiased review, we find that the wall upon which Chord and its co-conspirators have placed the Mojo is actually falling apart. AudioscienceReview.com is a site I visit often. I like their numbers, though I don't always agree with what they hear. I find that Audio Science Review is usually down the middle, offering praise when they hear something good and criticism when they don't. And as you can imagine, their findings were just a little bit different from what the co-conspirators were feeding the public. Let's go through some of the things that Audio Science Review found. Let's talk about the SYNAD performance. Now, SYNAD is a signal plus noise plus distortion measurement. In the most simple terms, think of it as a measure of how noisy or distorted an amp is. Audio Science Review's measurements put the Mojo, quote, solidly at the bottom of our Tier 2 DAC performance. Oh, and to rub salt on the wound, they said that the SYNAD measurement is about the same as the one for the topping NX4. But what about distortion? When measuring distortion alone, they found that the Mojo again fails. Audio Science Review compared it to the topping DX3 Pro, and you know what? The Mojo didn't score the same as the topping. Whew, that was close. Oh wait, it was worse. The Mojo was measured at a higher distortion level and had an unseemly noise bump around 25 decibels, or negative 25 decibels to be more precise. Now, all this stuff is stuff that should have been brought out by the mainstream reviewers, but they didn't. And you know what? Audio Science Review took a few additional steps and put the test up a little bit higher. They tested the power output of the Chord Mojo at 300 ohms and at 33 ohms. Let's find out what they found. The 300 ohm power output was compared to the topping DX3 Pro. The Mojo's ability to drive 300 ohms was choppy and unstable, they said. The power output was less than the DX3 Pro. The Mojo came at, well, roughly speaking, since the damn thing wasn't even stable, it came in at 71 milliwatts at 300 ohms. The topping at high gain mode was 123 milliwatts at 300 ohms. And what about that 33 ohm power output test, again comparing to the DX3 Pro? The Mojo's measurement was a little more stable here, but still had high noise level just like it did in the 300 ohm test. The Mojo failed again. It measured 409 milliwatts at 33 ohms to topping's 567 milliwatts in high gain at 33 ohms. Sad. Measurements are helpful. I've always said that. Measurements aren't everything, but they are important in busting audiophile claims. Moreover, high-end, high-priced, and hyped products should be closely examined. Audiophile claims are easy to fabricate, and those of us who don't speak the lingo can be misled. That's why measurements for hi-fi products is imperative. And the Mojo failed in those measurements. It failed a test when put up against claims and the hype. The claims for the Mojo are rather robust, aren't they? The CEO said that Mojo is the most important product in the lineup at the time. The designer had a hissy fit and said that the Mojo could easily compete with a full desktop, a reference class desktop that lasts and costs as much as a luxury car. John Darko made some vague comments about how unicorns run through your ears when you listen to the Mojo, whatever, and Headphonia sidestepped their own test results and winked and nodded Chord through the review. But Audio Science Review's measurements show the co-conspirators were trying to pull off a heist. The Audio Science Review conclusion is rather simple, and I think I should just quote it in its entirety. There is really nothing broken in the Chord Mojo. It performs well in a variety of tests. The issue with it is so much technical hype about its superiority that one is left empty after seeing performance that is well below state-of-the-art. We have DACs at less than half the price easily outperforming it on many tests. I cannot see any technical benefit to its design approach. On the contrary, that approach brings with it much higher cost and power consumption. Combine that with the poor user interface and the Chord Mojo is simply not my cup of tea. Ouch. The simple truth about all of this, I think, is the following. First, Chord fed a lot of bullshit to friendly reviewers when the Mojo was first announced and released. Second, those reviewers accepted what they heard even when they had ample information not to trust what Chord said. John Darko, for example, apparently had some reservations about the Mojo and was trying to figure out how this thing could be so hi-fi as Chord claimed. And in return, he got 2 emails telling him to mind his own business and do his damn job because the Mojo is the most important product ever. And when Headphonia reviewed the Mojo, it found the unit wasn't detailed, wasn't nearly the Hugo Chord claimed it was. This was clearly different from what Chord had told Headphonia, but all of that was casually brushed aside as if it didn't matter. Third, Chord's hype machine went into full gear from the outset. They had a press conference of sorts with influential audiophiles. It fed those people propaganda to disseminate, which was done. That propaganda came with an embargo, only 3 days to review the product before it would be released. That is, 3 days to get it, set it up in the reviewer's office, let it burn in, test with various music and headphones and compare it to other devices. No mean feat, and as John Darko said, woefully insufficient. Fourth, since the release of this product over 3 to 4 years, Chord has ignored the continual issues with this product. Battery issues, ports dying, sound jitters, noise in the signal. Instead, they have rested, knowing they put the hype train on automatic. The influential reviewers already said what Chord wanted. And we all know that those reviewers never go back and don't bother to examine a company's claims critically and with skepticism. Indeed, John Darko's posts about the Mojo, with all the candy-filled euphemisms of a 3-year-old who doesn't know language skills yet, were uploaded in October 2015. Headphonia's so-called review was posted in September 2016. A few other review sites like whathifi.com and The Master Switch reviewed the Mojo more recently, though much more succinctly. And in their one-page-long, stupendously undetailed and uninformative comments, they placated to Chord once again. Both sites gave the Mojo full points, with the only negative that the device gets a little warm. The propaganda machine need only work once. It need only have influential reviewers post something, and then the internet will forever propagate it. And that is exactly what happened. Indeed, over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, the first mention of a detailed, measured review came from Audio Science Review in November 2018. Audio Science Review's measurements should have become talking points for reviewers. The fact that the Mojo failed nearly every test, that it ranked no more than middle of the road to other less expensive devices, that it was noisier than the other devices, that it lacked power output when compared to other devices, that it lost repeatedly to Chinese products. But none of the influentials went back, and Chord apparently had done nothing to address these measurements, if they even cared. The ecosystem built around highfalutin audiophiles is self-aggrandizing. It allows those audiophiles to get high on their own supply of bullshit. It's a pile of old, naked, half-functioning adults participating in an orgy of self-deception and self-promotion. And frankly, it hurts everyone else, those of us who have nowhere else to look for guidance. But things don't have to be this way. Imagine for a moment what is happening. You walk into a bank. You haven't been to this particular bank before, but you know what a bank looks like. It's got sofas and chairs and desks and a large counter where clerks take and give money. You know the routine. You walk into the bank, get in line, and wait your turn to do your business. But on this day, you walk in and get an odd feeling. All the customers are sitting eerily still on a sofa near the back of the bank, and the clerks are standing still next to a man with a trench coat. Somebody is whimpering, and you see a man walking out with a large bag. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going on. You're not a dummy, you're not an idiot, and you certainly are not going to act along with these charades. This is a bank heist, friends, and you just busted it. My sound impressions. Okay. So you might say, what is the big deal? You're making too much out of this. Well, maybe. Maybe I am. Perhaps it doesn't matter to those who already have the Mojo and love it, or to those who love Chord and will accept anything that the company says, or to those who simply refuse to understand that consumers deserve better treatment, or frankly, those who are much too much caught up in their own world, too engrossed in their uber special audiophile bullshit to care. But I care. And if you've watched or listened this far, I assume you care. The Mojo doesn't sound fantastic. It is not a reference DAC. It has noticeable noise at higher volumes. Its connection options are idiotic and difficult for no reason other than because Chord wanted it that way. The laughable 3-orb user interface is one of the stupidest ideas ever formulated by man, probably second only to a square wheel. The faulty battery will need replaced within 18 months, if not sooner, of normal use. And that's not particularly negative, but charging nearly $100 for the battery and up to $200 for a battery replacement by a Chord partner is outrageous. The fact that Chord itself has no idea what DAPs can and cannot be used with the Mojo is shockingly arrogant. It shows that they don't care to even care. But let's go back to that sound quality. The Mojo has a boosted bass, one that starts melding the frequencies and often makes it impossible to hear nuances in a mix. The gentle treble response, though I admit very pleasant to listen to, loses so much detail that you may never hear the true qualities of a song you bought in high-res, DSD or PCM or MQA or whatever else format you found. The mids sound good, I'll grant you that, but only when the bass doesn't overpower them. The Chord lacks air in the presentation. It sounds very narrow, closed off, some might say intimate. But with that intimacy comes a sacrifice of hearing wide soundstage, depth, and verticality. In short, the Mojo is a decent DAC, but it misses the mark necessary to justify its high price and hype. Here are the things that could and should have been implemented. USB-C should have been implemented. It was, in fact, released in 2014 and becoming mainstream in 2016 when the Mojo came out. They should have found a better battery, or at least offered a free or significantly discounted battery replacement. They should have provided play, pause, and skip buttons because every other portable device has one. The UI should have been made for the consumer and not for Chord's own ego for colors. The noise should have been better controlled. The connection ports should have been engineered so that anyone could use the Mojo with any device instead of hunting for the correct cable, if one even exists. The Chord should have included all the necessary accessories in the purchase. But, and I'm sure that there are many other things that could have been done correctly and weren't. Now look, I'm not so upset about the sound. It's unique enough for me to say it's different from anything else I've heard, except for the i5 Black Label. But the cost of this sound signature, the frustration, the unmitigated and undeserved hype is simply unacceptable. Closing thoughts. I'm sure I'll get many dislikes for this video, because either people won't bother to actually listen to the argument with an open mind, or because they dislike someone pointing out that they may have made a mistake. I have looked for months for Mojo reviews. It is nearly impossible to find a mainstream reviewer pointing out the faults of this thing. And users constantly sing praises, almost always saying the unit sounds amazing, without ever addressing the problems we've already discussed, and in fact putting down other people who have tried to mention these issues. This is what a cult looks like. People follow one form of thinking, and anything that challenges it must be expelled. The only way to stop such thinking, the only way to stop them from misleading you, is to call them out on their bullshit. Well, I call bullshit on Chord. I call bullshit on John Darko. I call bullshit on Headphonia. I call bullshit on every Head-Fi poster who claims that the Mojo is the most detail amp tack ever. I call bullshit on Chord evangelists who defend its nefarious practice of lying to people about what the Mojo can do. But I praise Audio Science Review for doing the in-depth analysis it was able to formulate. I praise those of you who do speak up and comment that the Mojo isn't God's gift to mankind. I praise you for not falling for the tricks. You should feel empowered to reject the propaganda. Now remember, as long as you know what the Mojo can and cannot actually do, you can make a reasoned decision. If you know the Mojo's failures but still choose to buy it, then you've made a thoughtful decision. And that's all I ask anyone ever do. As for me, I'm not sad that I purchased the Mojo. I kind of like its sound. I got it at an almost reasonable price, and since I didn't buy into the Mojo bullshit to begin with, I wasn't actually disappointed. I'm just irritated with Chord, and I'm concerned that people are still clinging to hope atop a wall that is, in fact, crumbling. If you've enjoyed this content, if you've enjoyed my analysis, if you enjoyed any of my other videos, then please consider donating to me on Patreon. I currently have 4 very giving patrons who have decided to share a little bit of their hard-earned money with me once a month. Their contributions help me keep this channel going. Every day I have people asking me to review products I don't own. And the thing of it is, I want to buy those products myself. I would prefer not to get hand-me-downs from other reviewers, and I would prefer not to have any sort of sponsorship by companies, because in order for these reviews to make sense, they have to be unbiased, they have to be truthful, they have to be unhindered by others. And so, if you can contribute just a little bit every month, once a month, that would help me continue to do my job. I thank all of you who are currently my patrons and anyone who would like to consider becoming one. I thank all of my subscribers. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing. And if you've been watching my channel but not subscribing yet and you like what you see and hear, then please do consider subscribing. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. If you have a request for me to review one of the products that I do currently own, please look at the review request form in the description below.